Ladies and gentlemen, all right, let's talk about this idea of being nice. We're told to be nice, to smile, to go along with things, even if somewhere deep down it feels like we're betraying something real in ourselves. Now, I'm not here to say kindness is a problem. Kindness is a beautiful thing, it's essential. But being nice as a habit, as a mask, that's something different. It's often a performance, a way to avoid discomfort, conflict, or disapproval. And the trouble is, this performance has a cost. When we make niceness a habit, we start to live out a role rather than living from the heart. We respond to situations with what we think is expected of us, rather than what we genuinely feel. This creates a kind of hollow space inside, an emptiness, because there's no genuine you coming through. Niceness becomes a safe place to hide, but the more you stay in that safe place, the less you actually experience life as it is. You're busy managing appearances, keeping everything tidy and agreeable, but meanwhile, real life, the raw, messy, unpredictable part of it is passing you by. What if you were to drop the act of being the nice guy and instead allowed yourself to be a real person? Now, this isn't an invitation to be rude or abrasive. But what if, instead of worrying so much about pleasing everyone else, you took a moment to get in touch with what's truly going on within you? What if you actually expressed your boundaries, your wants, your dislikes without all the social polish? See, there's a fear at the heart of this nice guy routine. The fear is that if we aren't nice, people won't like us, they won't approve of us. But that fear is based on a fundamental misunderstanding. Approval from others is not the same as acceptance of yourself. Niceness is often a shortcut to get approval without having to stand on the ground of our true selves. But it's only when you step away from that and start letting the truth of yourself show up, sometimes a little messy, sometimes a little rough around the edges, that you find a deeper, more honest connection with people. So here's the paradox: stop trying so hard to be liked, and you'll start discovering real relationships, real respect, and even real kindness. When you're not worried about looking nice, you have the space to be kind from the heart, not from a place of fear or need. And that kindness has a completely different energy. It's no longer conditional, no longer something you're trading for acceptance. It's a generosity that flows from the confidence of someone who has embraced their whole self-shadow and all. Dropping the nice guy act doesn't mean you become a brute, it means you become whole. It means showing up as you are. And that's far more compelling, far more inspiring than anything you could ever achieve by just being nice. So step into that space. Let yourself be real, and watch as life opens up in ways you never expected. Niceness is often praised as a virtue, but it's rarely examined closely. We're encouraged to be nice, polite, and agreeable from a young age, and over time this behavior can become so deeply ingrained that we no longer question it. However, for many people, this niceness is not an expression of who they truly are, but rather a kind of mask they wear, a role they play. This mask may make interactions smooth and socially acceptable, but it can also separate us from our genuine emotions, desires, and even from our own identities. The nice guy routine, or habitual niceness, can become a way to avoid discomfort. We say yes when we want to say no, we smile when we feel annoyed, and we agree when we actually disagree. This pattern may make us feel safe, but it also suppresses parts of ourselves that are just as valid, parts that need expression and acknowledgement. Over time, this disconnect between how we present ourselves and what we genuinely feel can create a hollow space within. There's a nagging sense that something essential is being held back, that the person we're presenting isn't the full truth of who we are. This can lead to feelings of emptiness or even resentment, as we continue to perform niceness for the sake of social harmony. Wearing this mask of niceness also has its roots in fear, specifically the fear of rejection or disapproval. People often worry that if they're not nice, they won't be accepted or loved. This fear can be so subtle that we don't even notice it's there, yet it dictates much of our behavior. We become preoccupied with making a good impression, with being likable, and with avoiding any actions that might lead others to think poorly of us. But this constant need for external validation creates a dependency on how others perceive us. It keeps us stuck in a cycle where we're only as good as the approval we receive from those around us. We prioritize the comfort and opinions of others over our own truth, and in doing so, we lose sight of who we really are. Furthermore, this mask of niceness can prevent authentic connections with others. When we're always presenting a sanitized, agreeable version of ourselves, people don't get to see the full, complex reality of who we are. Relationships that are built on this type of selective disclosure tend to remain shallow because they lack the depth that comes from vulnerability and honesty. It's one thing to get along with people, but it's another to form a genuine bond that acknowledges both strengths and flaws, agreements and disagreements. When we're stuck in the habit of niceness, we deny others the chance to truly know us. And paradoxically, the relationships we end up creating may reinforce our fear of being unlikable if we're anything less than nice. Niceness can also obscure our boundaries, both with others and with ourselves. If we're always trying to be agreeable, we may struggle to say no, to stand up for ourselves, or to assert our own needs. Instead, we let our boundaries blur to avoid potential conflict. In the short term, this may seem like an easy way to keep the peace, but over time it can lead to feelings of resentment and frustration. We might begin to feel that people are taking advantage of us, not realizing that our own refusal to set boundaries has contributed to the problem. And this unexpressed frustration can turn inward, where we become critical of ourselves for not standing up or speaking out. We might even begin to resent others for not respecting boundaries we never clearly established. In addition, being habitually nice can limit our personal growth. True growth often involves confronting uncomfortable truths about ourselves, challenging our assumptions, and taking risks that might not always be seen as nice. If we are constantly focused on maintaining an agreeable front, we may shy away from these opportunities. We might avoid honest self-reflection because it could reveal aspects of ourselves that we're uncomfortable with or that others might not approve of. This avoidance keeps us in a kind of psychological stasis, where we're unwilling to explore who we are beyond the confines of what others find pleasant or palatable. In this way, the mask of niceness becomes a barrier to self-discovery. Ultimately, the cost of wearing this mask is that we lose touch with our true selves. The person we present to the world becomes a carefully curated version of who we think we should be, rather than who we actually are. And the longer we keep up this act, the harder it becomes to remove the mask and remember our true face beneath it. This disconnect can lead to feelings of unfulfillment, as we realize that our life has been shaped more by the expectations of others than by our own desires. We become actors in our own lives, following a script that doesn't reflect our true selves, and over time this can become deeply unsatisfying. The path to authenticity requires us to question the role of niceness in our lives and to ask ourselves if this niceness is truly an expression of our genuine self or merely a way to keep the peace at the cost of our own integrity. Only by peeling back the mask can we begin to live in alignment with who we truly are and foster connections that are built on honesty rather than pretense. Avoiding authenticity often comes at a hidden cost. On the surface, it may seem harmless or even wise to play along, to be agreeable, and to avoid expressing parts of ourselves that might rock the boat. However, living this way gradually distances us from our true selves. We begin to rely on a version of ourselves crafted to meet the expectations of others, not realizing that this curated persona slowly takes over, leaving our genuine desires, beliefs, and feelings behind. This distance from authenticity can lead to subtle yet powerful feelings of dissatisfaction, as our inner world and outer actions become increasingly misaligned. One of the most immediate costs of avoiding authenticity is the erosion of self-trust. When we consistently disregard our feelings and instincts, we start to doubt ourselves. Over time, we may stop recognizing our own inner voice because it has been drowned out by the opinions, expectations, and judgments of others. When this happens, we lose the confidence to make decisions that genuinely reflect our values and priorities. Instead of turning inward to assess what feels right or true to us, we look outward for guidance, letting the crowd dictate our choices. This reliance on external validation can lead us to a life that feels alien, as though we're simply going through the motions rather than living in alignment with who we truly are. Another cost of avoiding authenticity is a sense of internal conflict. The mind and heart are constantly negotiating between what we want to express and what we feel we should express. For example, someone may feel a strong desire to pursue a certain career path, but suppresses it in favor of a more acceptable option to please family or friends. This inner struggle becomes exhausting over time, as we repeatedly silence our own voice in favor of what we think will be met with approval. This internal dissonance not only consumes energy, but also breeds resentment toward others, and often even toward ourselves for not having the courage to act on what we feel to be true. There's also a significant impact on relationships. When we present an inauthentic version of ourselves, the connections we form are based on a version of us that isn't fully real. As a result, these relationships remain superficial, never reaching the depth or mutual understanding that come from true vulnerability. This lack of authenticity in relationships can lead to a profound sense of loneliness, even if we're surrounded by people. The reality is that genuine connection requires openness, honesty, and a willingness to be seen as we are, flaws and all. But if we constantly wear a mask, we deny others the opportunity to know us on that level. And the fear is that if we do reveal our true selves, we might lose the acceptance of those we care about. However, this fear keeps us trapped in relationships that don't nourish us and that ultimately fail to satisfy our need for real intimacy. Avoiding authenticity also impacts our mental and emotional well-being. Constantly suppressing emotions or denying our truth creates an underlying stress, a kind of low-grade anxiety that follows us around. It's as though we're living with a persistent tension that doesn't fully dissipate because we're always on guard, careful to keep up appearances and to meet expectations. This chronic state of tension can lead to symptoms of anxiety or depression as we carry the weight of unmet needs and unspoken truths. By not allowing ourselves to express what we genuinely feel, we block the natural flow of our emotions, which over time can make us feel numb or disconnected from ourselves. It's as if our emotional landscape becomes barren, lacking the vibrancy that comes from living openly and honestly. Creativity and personal growth are other areas that suffer when we avoid authenticity. Creativity requires freedom, the freedom to explore, to make mistakes, to try new things without fearing judgment. When we're not true to ourselves, we become overly cautious, afraid to step outside the bounds of what's considered acceptable. This need to conform stifles our creative impulses, making it hard to pursue ideas that might be unconventional or risky, but that truly excite us. Similarly, personal growth is hindered when we avoid authenticity, as true growth often requires self-reflection, facing uncomfortable truths, and challenging ourselves to change. But if we're constantly focused on maintaining a particular image, we miss out on these opportunities for transformation. We remain in our comfort zones, never fully realizing our potential or discovering what we're capable of. The cost of avoiding authenticity is also seen in a lack of fulfillment. When we deny our true selves, we often settle for a life that doesn't bring us joy. We may follow paths that are expected of us, whether in career, relationships, or personal pursuits, but these paths feel empty because they don't resonate with who we are at our core. This lack of fulfillment is one of the greatest costs of inauthentic living, as it affects our overall sense of purpose and happiness. We might find ourselves wondering, is this all there is, or feeling as though we're merely existing rather than truly living? This existential dissatisfaction can be incredibly painful, as it reflects the distance between the life we're living and the life we truly desire. In essence, avoiding authenticity is like putting ourselves in a self-made prison. We keep parts of ourselves hidden, locked away, in an effort to fit in or avoid discomfort. But over time, this approach does more harm than good, as it creates a life that doesn't align with our true selves. The more we avoid authenticity, the more we reinforce a version of ourselves that isn't real, and the harder it becomes to remember who we truly are. The cost is subtle but profound, a gradual erosion of self, a life that feels like it's slipping by without truly being lived. Embracing wholeness over niceness is a transformative journey that invites us to reclaim our authentic selves. While niceness often serves as a protective mask, wholeness encompasses the full spectrum of human experience, our joys, fears, strengths, and vulnerabilities. The shift from niceness to wholeness requires courage, self-reflection, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves. This journey is not just about personal growth, it's about redefining what it means to truly connect with others and live a life that feels genuine and fulfilling. To embrace wholeness, we must first acknowledge that we are multifaceted beings. Each of us contains a rich tapestry of emotions, experiences, and qualities that make us unique. Yet, when we prioritize niceness, we often strip away these layers, presenting a simplified version of ourselves that adheres to social expectations. This can create an internal conflict, as the parts of ourselves that we deem unacceptable or unlovable are relegated to the shadows. The journey toward wholeness invites us to bring those hidden aspects into the light, to recognize that they are integral to our identity. Accepting our flaws and imperfections is a vital step in this process, as it allows us to see ourselves as complete individuals rather than a series of traits that need to be polished or hidden. Embracing wholeness also involves acknowledging our emotional landscape. We often feel pressured to present a cheerful exterior, especially in social situations where niceness is the currency of acceptance. However, emotions like anger, sadness, and fear are natural and necessary parts of the human experience. They provide essential information about our needs and desires, guiding us toward authenticity. When we embrace wholeness, we create space for all our emotions, allowing ourselves to feel and express them without judgment. This acceptance fosters emotional resilience, as we learn to navigate our feelings rather than suppressing them. It empowers us to communicate our needs honestly and establish healthy boundaries, rather than resorting to passive-aggressive behaviors or bottling up our emotions. Moreover, wholeness encourages us to engage with the world authentically. When we stop trying to be nice at the expense of our true selves, we open the door to genuine connections. Authenticity creates an environment where vulnerability is welcomed and where people can share their thoughts and feelings without fear of judgment. This authenticity is contagious. When we show up as our true selves, we invite others to do the same. Relationships built on authenticity are deeper and more meaningful, allowing for real understanding and empathy. We connect with others not just on the surface, but in a way that honors the complexities of our shared human experience. Living from a place of wholeness also allows us to set boundaries that reflect our true values and priorities. When we prioritize niceness, we often find ourselves saying yes to requests and demands that don't align with our authentic selves. This can lead to burnout, resentment, and a feeling of being overwhelmed. Embracing wholeness means recognizing our limits and honoring them, even if that means disappointing others. It's about understanding that we have a right to prioritize our own well-being, and that doing so is not selfish, it's necessary for maintaining healthy relationships and a balanced life. Setting boundaries is a form of self-respect, allowing us to create a life that reflects our true desires rather than being molded by the expectations of others. In addition, embracing wholeness cultivates self-compassion. When we accept our imperfections and acknowledge that we are human, we foster a kinder relationship with ourselves, rather than criticizing ourselves for not being nice, or for having moments of weakness. We learn to offer ourselves the same compassion we would extend to a friend. This self-compassion is liberating. It enables us to move through life with a sense of grace, understanding that we are all doing our best amidst the complexities of existence. With self-compassion, we become less reliant on external validation and more attuned to our own needs and desires. The journey toward wholeness also enhances our capacity for personal growth. When we embrace our complete selves, we become open to new experiences, learning, and change. We no longer shy away from challenges for fear of failure. Instead, we see them as opportunities to expand our horizons and deepen our understanding of ourselves. This growth mindset is fundamental to living a fulfilling life, as it encourages exploration, creativity, and resilience. We become more adaptable and resourceful, learning to navigate the inevitable ups and downs of life with a sense of curiosity rather than fear. Embracing wholeness over niceness allows us to contribute more meaningfully to our communities and the world. When we live authentically, we are more likely to stand up for our values and advocate for change. We become engaged and active participants in the world around us, using our unique voices to make a difference. This sense of purpose can be incredibly fulfilling, as it aligns our actions with our core beliefs and values. By embracing our wholeness, we can inspire others to do the same, creating a ripple effect that encourages authenticity and vulnerability in our communities. The journey from niceness to wholeness is a deeply personal one, marked by exploration, self-discovery, and growth. It requires us to confront our fears, challenge societal norms, and embrace the complexity of our humanity. However, the rewards are profound: a richer, more meaningful existence, deeper connections with others, and a life that resonates with our true selves. By choosing wholeness over niceness, we not only liberate ourselves, but also create a space for others to step into their own authenticity, fostering a world where genuine connection and understanding can thrive.